The Alpha King could hear every lie, except the one hidden inside his own heart. Ethan Mercer had never been wrong about a person, not once. He had sat across from hundreds of people over the years, business partners, employees, rivals, and every single time, he knew the truth before they finished their sentence. It was not magic. It was not something he could fully explain. It was simply a gift he had carried since childhood. He could hear the tiny shake in someone's voice when they were hiding something. He could see the small pause before an answer that should have been easy. He could feel, in the air between two people, when something was being left unsaid. Because of this, Ethan ran his company like a perfect machine. He led thousands of employees across 17 floors of a glass tower in the middle of the city. Everyone respected him. Many feared him. No one ever tried to fool him twice. He was 34 years old. He had built everything he owned with his own hands and his own sharp mind. And he had decided, long ago, that he did not need warmth. Warmth was soft. Warmth got people hurt. What mattered was truth, and he had made truth his closest companion. His second in command, Marcus, had been his best friend since university. Marcus was the only person in Ethan's life who spoke to him like a human being instead of a king. He would say things like, "Ethan, eat something," or, "You missed the birthday dinner again," and Ethan would wave him off and return to his files. The company was conducting an internal audit that autumn, a deep review of the financial records, processes, and numbers that held the entire organization together. For this, they brought in outside specialists, and that was how Nadia Osei walked into Ethan's life. She arrived on a Tuesday morning with a brown folder under her arm and a calm expression on her face. She was 28, and she carried herself with the kind of quiet that comes not from shyness, but from knowing exactly who you are. She did not look around the office with wide eyes the way new people usually did. She simply found her desk, sat down, opened her folder, and began to work. Ethan noticed her on the second day, not because she did anything unusual, but because she did nothing unusual. Every other new person in the building, within their first week, would come to him with something, a question, a compliment, a reason to be in his presence. Nadia did not come to him at all. She sent her questions by email. She communicated through proper channels. She was completely professional and completely uninterested in impressing him. He found this strange. Then he found it interesting. He began to observe her during team meetings. She spoke only when she had something worth saying. She did not fill silence with noise. When someone else made an error in the numbers, she corrected them gently, without embarrassing anyone. And when Ethan caught her eye once across the conference table, she did not look away nervously like most people did. She simply looked back at him for a moment, then returned to her notes. He told himself he was watching her professionally. He told himself it was because he had not yet formed a clear picture of her, and unclear pictures bothered him. Weeks passed. The audit moved forward. Ethan and Nadia began working more closely, reviewing reports together in the late evenings when the rest of the office had gone home. The building would grow quiet, and the two of them would sit on opposite sides of the long table with their papers and laptops, and sometimes they would talk, not just about numbers, but about ideas. About the way organizations fail from the inside, before they ever fail from the outside. About the difference between people who work hard and people who work wisely. Nadia was direct without being cold. She disagreed with Ethan twice in their first week of working together, and both times she was right. He respected that more than she knew. One evening, as the rain moved across the city windows, Ethan looked up from a report and asked her something personal for the first time. He said, "Do you find this kind of work meaningful, or is it just a job to you?" She set her pen down. She looked at the window for a moment, then at him, and she said, "I find it meaningful." There was no shake in her voice, no pause that lasted too long, no sign of anything hidden. Ethan believed her completely and moved on. What he did not know, what he could not have known, was that her answer was true, but it was not the whole truth. Nadia did find the work meaningful. That was real. But underneath that answer lived something else she chose not to say, that she was beginning to find him meaningful too. That she looked forward to these evenings in a way that made her careful. She had been through enough in her life to know that certain feelings, if spoken too early, become targets. So she folded that part of the truth quietly and kept it for herself. The Alpha King, who had never missed a lie in his life, missed nothing, because it was not a lie. It was a truth she simply chose to hold inside, and you cannot hear what is never spoken. The board of directors, as part of their annual process, required all senior executives to complete a wellness consultation with a professional. Ethan considered this an administrative inconvenience and treated it as such. He arrived at Dr. Lena Vargas's office with the energy of a man who had agreed to waste 40 minutes. Dr. Vargas was a small, calm woman who wore reading glasses on the end of her nose and had the patience of someone who had heard every kind of deflection there was. She did not ask Ethan about his productivity or his goals. She asked him questions he was not prepared for. When someone is wrong about you, she said, do you correct them or do you let it go? He said he corrected them. Always? She asked. He said yes. Then he paused and said, it depends. She wrote something in her notepad. What do you tell yourself, she asked, when the day ends and you are alone? He told her he reviewed the day's decisions. That's what you do, she said. I asked what you tell yourself. He had no answer that satisfied him. He left the first session unsettled in a way he could not identify. He returned the following week and the week after that, not because he wanted to, but because something in those questions would not leave him alone. Dr. Vargas helped him see something slowly, the way a photograph develops in a dark room. Ethan had built his entire identity around one ability, hearing what was false in others. But this very ability had allowed him to avoid something important. Because he was always listening outward, he had never learned to listen inward. He had never examined the stories he told himself, that closeness was a weakness, that needing people was a risk, that keeping everyone at a comfortable distance was the only way to stay strong. These were not facts. They were beliefs he had inherited from his father, a man who ran their household the same way Ethan now ran his company, firmly, fairly, and without softness. His father had taught him that a man who needs no one cannot be broken. Ethan had taken this as truth for 34 years. He had never once questioned it. Marcus came to his office one afternoon and sat across from him. He did not bring any files. He just sat there and looked at Ethan with the expression of someone who has been waiting to say something for a long time. You are different around her, Marcus said. Ethan did not pretend not to know who he meant. He said, I am not different. You listen to her differently, Marcus said. You don't listen to people, Ethan. You study them. But with her, you actually listen. You want to hear what she says. Ethan said nothing. You're not watching her because you don't trust her, Marcus said. You're watching her because she is the first person in years you've actually wanted to trust. Ethan asked him to leave. Marcus left, but his words stayed in the room. The audit concluded on a Friday. The work was finished. Nadia's contract was over. She packed her brown folder and her pens and her notebook into her bag. She came to Ethan's office to say goodbye. She shook his hand, thanked him for the opportunity, said it had been genuinely good work, and wished him well. He shook her hand. He said, safe travels. She smiled at him, not the wide, performative smile people gave him to make a good impression, but a small, real one, and she walked to the elevator. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. The doors closed. Ethan stood in the middle of his office, and then, for the first time in his adult life, he heard something untrue. Not from anyone in the room, but from somewhere inside himself. A quiet, certain voice that said, you don't care that she's gone. He knew what a lie felt like. He had spent his entire life recognizing them. This was a lie. He stood very still for a moment, the way a person stands when they realize the ground under them is not exactly what they thought it was. He did not run to the elevator. That was not who he was. But he felt the full weight of what had just happened. He had spent 15 years hearing every false note in every other person's voice, and the whole time, something false had been living in his own chest, comfortable and unexamined, telling him he was fine. He called Marcus that evening and said 3 words, I missed it. Marcus did not ask what he meant. He said, I know. Ethan went back to Dr. Vargas. He sat down in the chair across from her, and for the first time, he did not perform certainty. He talked about his father. He talked about what he had learned, and what he had decided, very young, about strength and need and closeness. He talked about how he had sharpened one ability to such a fine point that he had used it to keep the whole world at a safe distance, including himself. Dr. Vargas listened. She did not congratulate him for finally opening up, the way he had feared she would. She simply said, "Now you know where to start." He reached out to Nadia a week later, not with a grand gesture, not with authority or charm. He sent her a message that said he would like to speak with her, and asked if she was willing. She replied the next morning and said she was. They met at a small coffee place near the river. She was already there when he arrived, sitting with both hands around a warm cup, watching the water outside. He sat across from her. He told her the truth. He said that working with her had unsettled him in a way he had not expected, and had not known how to name. He said that when she left, he noticed something inside himself that he had been ignoring for a long time. He said he was not there to make promises or ask for anything specific. He was there because he was tired of being dishonest with himself, and being honest had to begin somewhere. She looked at him for a moment across the table. Then she said, "I have heard very good words from very confident people before. Words are easy." He nodded. He said, "You are right. I am not offering you words. I am telling you where I actually am. I don't know how any of this unfolds. I only know that lying to myself about it was the first real mistake I have made in many years, and I would rather admit that than protect my pride." She was quiet for a while. She looked at the river. Then she looked back at him. "That," she said softly, "is the most honest thing I have heard you say." They did not solve everything that afternoon. Life does not work that way. But something real began at that small table by the river. Two people choosing to be truthful with each other, and with themselves, in a world that makes honesty difficult. Ethan Mercer did not lose his gift. He still heard every false note in every room he walked into. But he had gained something more important, the ability to finally turn that same careful attention inward, to hear himself, to stop running from the things he felt and start listening to them the way he listened to everything else, with patience, with honesty, and without fear. The greatest lie he had ever lived with was the one he had told himself the longest, and it was only when he stopped protecting it that he finally became, for the first time, truly free.